Welcome. So glad you're here. This is wonderful. So many of you were here for part one of Patanjali's Yoga Sutras. This is part two. If you missed part one, it doesn't matter at all. Patanjali's Sutras is circular in nature rather than linear, so it's not like, but things do build. And I'm going to recap very quickly what we went through in the first chapter. So there are 4 chapters in this document. It's 198 lines, and I find this document like there's just nothing that compares to it. Like it's a 2,000-year-old document where somebody, just imagine this assignment if somebody said to you, put down the workings of consciousness, the rules for personal transformation in 200 lines. Make it short, sweet, pithy, and clear. And it's really also very devoid of personality, which is purposeful because there's not a lot of projection. Often like as the Course in Miracles says, like this is the universal curriculum. It happens to be it in a Christian type format. If that works for you, great. And for many people, it doesn't. The Christian terminology doesn't work, even though the universal curriculum is in there. What I like about this is he's done such a great job of just keeping it very clean, very scientific. It reads like a scientific document, so it's really hard to project onto it. Both in Patanjali's Yoga Sutras and the Bhagavad Gita, it starts by a 1-2 punch. These are both non-dual philosophies, which is what yoga is. So it basically comes out right away and says, here's the gig. You are infinite, eternal, and whole. You are infinite, eternal, and whole. And as I like to say, ... or you're not. So those are the 2 choices. You got to sort of just start to wrestle with that. I'm either infinite, eternal, whole consciousness, or I'm not. I'm this body, I will die, I'm a man, you're a woman, I'm older, you're younger. So that's the 2 choices. If we are infinite, eternal, whole consciousness, we have nothing to fear. So, if you're infinite, eternal, and whole consciousness, you have nothing to fear. So this is about what the curriculum on the planet is. And often, we get confused about what the curriculum of being here is about. And if we are infinite, eternal, whole consciousness, and what Patanjali says is, this is a series of practices that gets us to fully remember and experience our infinite, eternal, whole self. That infinite, eternal, whole self is fearless, at one with everything all the time. That means that the curriculum of the planet is this. It is to rid us of every fear that we have. That means that what we see out here in what yoga calls the Maya or the Leela, this big play, this mirage out here, it's nothing more than each of us individually manifesting our personal fears so that we can experience them. And then it's all of us collectively manifesting our personal fears. And that's what the world is all of us manifesting our biggest fears for one purpose. And this is what we forget, to simply unwind them. Okay? So it talks about karma. Karma is this group of our past fears, actually. And our karma, each one of our karma is a accumulation of our samskaras. So each of your individual fears added up together make this big ball of subliminal fears that sit behind us and not often, they rule our lives. Okay? To rid yourself of your karma, what you're actually doing is dismantling past fears. So let's say, for example, making stuff up, I drowned in a past life. I have a fear of water. Okay? That's karma. That's a samskara. So as an infinite, eternal, whole being, I have no reason to be afraid of drowning. I have no reason to be afraid of water. But in this lifetime, I'm afraid of water. Now I do everything I do to try and control myself so I don't get near water. So now I'm trying to control the Maya, and I spend a lot of energy trying to not experience my karma, my samskara. What this is saying is, the curriculum here is to actually experience our fears, which we're doing daily. We manifest them beautifully, and for one purpose, to unwind them, to become victorious of them. So the biggest fear, of course, is I'm going to die. Okay? Every fear that we have is related to the belief that we can die in some way or another. No matter how big or small the fear is, I'm afraid I'm going to lose my job. What's so scary about that? If I don't have a job, I won't be able to pay the rent. What's so scary about that? If I can't pay the rent, I'll be homeless. What's so scary about that? If I'm homeless and can't eat, I'll eventually die. No one will love me. I'll eventually die. Okay, so if you follow any fear that you have down to the bottom, it is related to the belief that you can die, or it's related to the belief that someone you love could die. So then we up it. Not only am I afraid of me dying, now I'm afraid of my family dying, really afraid of my kids dying. So I'm going to do what I'm going to, okay, so now we do that. And then we go, I'm afraid of our country being attacked. And then we could blow up the whole world. So, of course, throughout the ages, no matter what time we lived in, and we have all lived in, if there's anything to past lives, we've all lived in all the different times. We have been murderers, murderees, rapers, rapees. We've been every part on the spectrum to play out our fears, okay? And every time on the planet, there's always the end of the world scenario. We manifest it constantly. It's always very real. When I was growing up, we were going to blow ourselves up with, the atomic bomb. It was the Cold War. We had to, drills during high school where you had to go out and, cover yourself and, bury your head in front of your locker, case of air raids. And, okay, I dreamt about bomb shelters as a kid and how I was going to save my family and we would get inside the bomb shelter and, okay, so that was growing up to, then. But it's the same today. We're on the edge of World War III. It could happen any time. We could blow ourselves up. It's always here. But let's go back, to the Pilgrims. The Pilgrims left England because they were, certain that the second coming was happening. Then they risked their lives and came over to the United States because, of course, it was the end of the world. Then when they got here, the Indians had been decimated, 90% of them gone from the Spanish and, and smallpox. So the Indians thought it was the end of the world. I mean, no matter what, the world was ending. Then all the buffalo get slaughtered by the English. The world was ending. So we always have end of the world fears. I just want to sum this up to say I like to call the news not the news. I think the news should be titled, What to Fear. Let's turn on What to Fear. Let's turn on tonight's What to Fear. The economy is going to blow. People got murdered. What about the elections? This could happen. That could happen. Your money means nothing. Look what's happening in Israel and Palestine. What to fear. So we turn on What to Fear and we get really involved in it. Okay? They have had many good news shows, very often where people say, oh, I want to change this scenario. We should have good news shows. They never work. They're never successful. People aren't really that interested in the good news shows. Occasionally news will slip a good news piece in, and it's a little lightheartedness, amidst the world of what to fear. But what we're really interested in is what to fear, because that's why we came here. We have to realize that what to fear actually isn't here to take us down, isn't real, is here to be dismantled and here for us to get free of. To graduate to a place where we start living as being an infinite, eternal, whole being. And then, in doing so, we realize, number one, this isn't our home, as A Course in Miracles says. This isn't our home. It's not, peace isn't possible here, per se. Okay? But then here's the paradox. The moment you realize that peace is impossible here, you start to be at peace here, because you're actually not invested in being here, so to speak. It's a weird paradox. It's like in the world, but not of it, as Jesus would say. So that sums up sort of the beginning chapter, where it points out, chapter 1 starts pointing at these are the practices to get you seated in your true self. This is what karma is. This is what samskaras are. If you have all of these fears and they're back here, they are constantly, what you're doing is you have a lot of your attention back here trying to hold these fears at bay, and then you put your attention out here trying to control this mirage out here so that you don't experience these fears back here. That's what most people are in the game of, let me try to feel safe here in a place where safety is impossible. It's like the Buddhist saying, pain is mandatory. Suffering is optional. Okay, so we're born in pain, we're going to die in pain, in between there's pain. The question is suffering. The only way I know to be free of suffering is to not attach myself to everything that's going on here and to say, there is a self in here that watches the pain. There is a self in here that can experience anything the good and the bad, and I'm the experiencer. I'm not the experience. And that this temporary experience of life will be over in a minute, in a nanosecond. And the moment we're lifted up from it, we go, wow, I had this weird dream. I dreamed I was this guy. I dreamed I did yoga. I dreamed I had a family. Wow, so glad that's over. You know? So that's chapter 1. Any thoughts or questions about that before we... I know that's a lot to swallow, but...
What's the difference between karma and samskara?
Samskaras are individual karmas. So it's like that's a samskara. All your samskaras together make up your karma.
Thank you.
So, what do you think? I saw head nodding.
Ready for more.
You ready for more? Yeah.
It's a truth that's felt and realized within oneself through the heart, and it's universal, and it's one in all of it. My only thing that got me thinking when you said that everyone's fear is to die, then I reflected on myself, and I didn't find that fear, and to know that there's so many different levels in life. Like, for example, my fear is not to live before I die, not to live fully, not to live. I have this strong fear that I'm not living life fully, and it doesn't matter when I die.
Mm-hmm. So that's great. And again, then I would say it's still related to death, because if you believed you wouldn't die, then there's no time. There's no time. There's no hurry. What, you're going to miss out on life this life? You'll get it next life. You'll get it the life after that. Yeah, like nothing to miss out on. You got all the time in the world. So death and time are related. The mind cannot conceive. It cannot conceive, and this is the problem with non-dual philosophy. The mind cannot conceive of the concept infinite, infinity, eternal. Because the mind's job is to label things. And the moment you label something, it's finite. So even though we talk here about eternity, I've labeled eternity, eternity. And we're talking about a finite concept. But eternity, if we're to actually experience infinite, eternal foreverness, the mind can't hold it because there's no edge. There's no moment where you go, oh, that's it. It just keeps going. Which is actually the ultimate experience of meditation, is to sit in a place where the mind does not label anything and sits labelless in an experience of the ongoing existence of the infinite. And that's, ultimately meditation, is sitting beyond all labels. Your good ones, your spiritual ones, your nasty ones, all of them. You go, I am not the labels. I am the labeler. And I begin to associate with the higher self, which watches the experience rather than is in it. Any other thoughts about the intro and the first chapter and etc.? All right, chapter 2. What I love is chapter 2 is aptly called. So the first chapter is called On Being Absorbed in Spirit, and it gives this description of being absorbed in our infinite, eternal whole self. The second chapter is called Practices on Being Immersed in Spirit. Now, this is what I love, one of the many things that I love about yoga. It is a science. And many times, as a yoga teacher, people would say, is yoga religion? And I would say, no. Here's the difference. As a religion, if I'm Catholic, here's what Catholics believe. Here's all the things. Literally in church, you say, I believe in the Holy Spirit, and you believe this. If you're a Protestant, you believe this. They split off from the Catholics because of 39, 30, 40, and 41. Then if you're an Episcopal, here's the list. So there's lists. If you believe this, you're a Catholic. If you don't believe it, you're not. If you believe this, you're an Episcopal. If you don't, you're not. And often, with religions, there are big consequences for not believing what's on the list, like burning in hell forever, stuff like that. So slight consequences. So you pretty much want to believe what's on the list. You're forced to believe what's on the list. Yoga does not care what you believe. It doesn't say, come to yoga, you need to believe this. Yoga says, come, period, and begin to do these practices. Do the practices. The practices will create an experience. The experience will begin to wear away at the beliefs that you hold. Okay? And if you are holding worthy beliefs that live up to your experience, because experience is king, then those beliefs will get strengthened. If not, they get worn away. So very often in my yoga teacher training, not very often, but occasionally what would happen is someone would start to come and they had strong, sometimes Christian beliefs, and they'd get a certain way along the yoga teacher training and say, I can't do this anymore. This is just not it's against my beliefs. It's like, okay, great. So they started to have an experience that started to scare them in regards to their beliefs. You have two choices. Stop doing what you're doing, the experience, and stay with your beliefs, or stay with the experience and adjust your beliefs. I'm fine with, well, great, you got to go? Yep, there is the door. So, there you go. Stay with your beliefs. That's fine. What yoga does is it creates experiences that help you be the believer of your beliefs. It is beyond your beliefs, okay? So, and it knows that ultimately every belief that you hold, even the helpful ones, need to be let go of in order to experience the infinite, eternal whole self, which is, as I like to say, beyond belief. Literally beyond belief, okay? So that's what we're going towards, is how do we experience the infinite, eternal whole self, and it's about to give us the practices. I'm interested, okay? So, glasses help. What I love is there are maps here, okay? So right here, it gives us the 5 kleshas. Now, I can't remember if I went over the 5 kleshas last time. Anybody familiar with the kleshas? So you're nodding no. Okay. 5 kleshas. So right away, Patanjali lists out these incredible maps. We went over some before. The 5 kleshas are the 5 causes of suffering. Anybody want to know the 5 causes of suffering? I do. Okay? So we're going to list out the 5 kleshas. Klesha number 1. Klesha. Spelled klesha. There are 5 causes of suffering.
Buddha only had 4.
What?
Buddha only had 4.
Oh, that's good. What were the 4? Do you remember?
There is suffering.
These are like the 4 Buddhist tenets, right?
Suffers.
Desire.
Yeah, and then, yeah.
But there are the four Buddhist tenets. So this says that there are 5 causes of suffering, and the first one is the cause of all the other 4 that follow that. Now, the other, 4 that follow. So to me, this is the root of all of the ones that follow that. So quite frankly, we don't even need to talk about the other 4. We're going to. But you want to get the first one. The first one is a vidya. Now in Sanskrit, often when an A is put in front of something, it means it's the opposite of the word that follows. So vidya is knowledge, but that's not knowledge like the head. It's knowing the true self, being seated in the true self. So avidya is lack of knowledge of the true self, okay? So it's saying here that all suffering comes from lack of knowledge of the true self, which is what I was just saying. Lack of knowing. And the true self is? Exactly. The true self is infinite. The true self is eternal and whole. This is what Jesus meant when he said, we're made in God's image. We too, like God, are infinite, eternal, whole consciousness. Okay? So, avidya, all suffering comes from lack of knowledge of being infinite, eternal, and whole. If you are suffering, you have forgotten that you are infinite, eternal, and whole. You have associated with the seeming experience, the seeming maya that the consciousness is having. But science proves that this physical reality that we're in is not physical at all. Okay, this time-space continuum is totally light waves that vibrate at frequencies that are manipulated by thought. Okay, so we're creating this world, and because we believe in it, we get in it, and then we feel victimized by it. We forgot we were the creators. So I like to say there are creators, and then there are creatures. Creatures are victims of their creation. Creators are creating the experience. Okay? As we begin to rise up and see what the purpose and the curriculum of the Maya is, when our fears come, rather than go, oh my God, something's gone wrong, we say, oh, it's come for my victory. I'm here, another good one to dismantle. Whoops, I'm free. Oh, whoops, I'm free. And when they show up with real people, real names, real dollar amounts, real consequences. Boom. You know, that's why we manifest them. They feel so real. And it's there for us to dismantle, to remember who we really are. So that's number one. After that one, the next one is asmita. Asmita, if you forget who you are, you become I-ness. This is really ego. Small self, not big self. And you start to create an identity because now that I've lost that, see, if I'm infinite, eternal, and whole, here's what happens. I can't just believe it about myself. I have to believe that Marshall is infinite, eternal, and whole also, and Kaki's infinite, eternal, and whole also. So that means, oh, we've been together forever. Oh, we're going to be together forever. It starts a whole different story. When you meet someone, it's like, oh, you again. And you again. Hello. Oh my God, let's lock arms. We're together forever. This is so cool. Let's help each other out here and have as much fun as possible in this game of manifesting our fears. Okay, that's what an infinite, eternal, whole being does. But the moment I forget I'm an infinite, eternal, whole being, I go, I'm a man, you're a woman. I have more, you have less. I have this, you have that. I need to protect myself and gather and start to compete with you because we're all about our limited resources and we're all about our bodies. And now the games begin. And this is the game of fear. It's a game of time, space, lack, you know, and measuring, you know, and competition. That's the world of asmita. That's what happens the moment we forget who we really are. Let the games begin. Then these two really go together, 3 and 4. The moment we have asmita, we have raga, which is there are things that we desire, things we want. And there's devesha, which is things that we resist. So this is the good-bad game. Now, I only want joy. I want to be happy, right? I'm here on earth. I want to be happy, right? So that means a nice house and a fence and a really great partner and, you know, a lot of money. And that's what happiness is. So I want to be happy. So I'm going to try and create safety and happiness here and have more than you and protect myself over here. So all of that desire creates a whole bunch of things that I resist. Okay, I don't want to experience sadness. I don't want to experience loss. I don't want to experience loneliness. I don't want to experience, you know, despair. All those things. And if I do, something's gone wrong. I'm not matching up to the beautiful lives that we see on Facebook, where people are only presenting their happy moments for the most part, you know, and where we all say like, oh, look, great, great, another trip they're going on, fabulous for them, you know, like, so that's the raga devesha. When we have asmita, we have things we desire, we have things we resist. Both of them will cause us suffering. Okay? Both of us will create unhappiness. The last to go and the most subtle is called abhinivesha. Abhinivesha. This is really the instinctual fear of death, okay? So this instinctual fear of death shows up really at the moment of death. A bus is coming toward you, you save yourself. You know, you have a heart attack and you're like, oh my God, I'm dying. You know, like, so what all yoga practices are about, actually, and they often speak about this, is to get you so that at the moment of your death, you're in a place of peace. I don't think it's true, but there's not a wives' tale, but I think it's a myth, but a little saying that basically says, if you die with fear, you know, in your moment of death is important. If you die in a state of fear, then that's what you take with you. You know, if you die in a state of grace, then, you know, you head straight to the feet of the Lord. So it's one of the reasons, for example, why some of these practices, for example, mantra. I was big for many years on mantra. Mantra was my thing. It's now running. You know, I've planted it in. But mantra is there so that abhinivesha, in your moment of death, what comes up is mantra. And it's, you know, Kemble and I lived in the same ashram. So my mantra, I noticed when I'm in a moment of fear, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. It comes right out of my cells. It's like it's in the background behind everything running. Turbulence on a plane, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. You know, it's like, okay, grab onto the mantra. You know, so it's a lot of these practices are designed so that you can associate yourself, even in, quote, the worst situation that the world will give you, that you can find yourself in a state of peace. I'm going to give you an example, not that it's like this, a great example, but it's one where I feel like I actually have several of them, but I was in a very serious car accident in 2014. My car, I left the airport. I arrived in Hartford, Connecticut at 2:30 in the morning, and I was driving through the mountains in the Berkshires, and there's like this 25-minute period that goes through a state park where there's no cell phone communication, and it's winding through the mountains to get to my home in Beckett. And when I got to Hartford, it was raining, so I said to myself, because I can drive like an asshole, I said, don't drive like an asshole. This is, be safe tonight. Not in a hurry, just take your time and get home. Even though I really wanted to get home. So I was like, I'm definitely paying attention to the speed limits and everything. But in the Berkshires, literally, like you can go around a bend. It was 36 on this side of the bend and whipped around the corner, and I was in an ice castle. Icicles hanging from the thing, the road, just a slick piece of ice. Came around the bend, and my car went into tilt-a-whirl. And I was on the edge of a mountain. This was the mountain, and this was the mountain. So I was in it. And it was no like, let me try and control the car and see what's going to happen. It was like, this is it, And I put my hands down in my lap, and I closed my eyes, and I said, this is going to be over when it's over. Like thy will be done. And literally I said to myself, if this is it, if I'm about to leave my body at this moment, I'm ready. I want to be awake. I want to be I'm interested. I want to be, who am I going to meet? Who am I going to see? This is fascinating. Fortunately, my car chose the mountainside, and it hit the mountain and tumbled 3 full times and landed upside down in the snow. The whole airbags had gone off. The car crushed in. The moonroof had come in and smashed on my head, and I was upside down with my knees like this. So after this happened, and this is the funniest, weirdest thing, which you guys will get because of who you are. I had a statue of Ganesh about this size, made out of concrete, in my an SUV, in the back of my SUV. Ganesh hurt me more than anybody because that statue broke, and I was being hit constantly in the head by pieces of concrete. So I had. Ganesh wanted to hit me in the head apparently, so I was like, okay, let's take this metaphor fully. I got knocked in the head. I had concussions from every side, and I had pretty bad, as my family likes to say, drain bramage, because at one point I said to my family, "Stop treating me like I have drain bramage," and they were like, "Okay, we will when you stop saying things like that," because I was mixing up words and not doing so well. But anyway, so I end up upside down, and the moonroof had embedded itself like shards of crystal in the top of my skull, which literally for weeks I'd be like, oops, there's another one, and pull out pieces of glass. I first went like this. I thought, maybe I'm dead. All the lights are out. There's no lights anywhere. I'm pitch black. And I'm like, maybe I'm dead. I don't think so. I'm like, neck's fine. Then I'm like, most 50-year-olds would be dead now, but I do this pose. So I'm okay, so relax, this is okay, here I am. And then I tried to couldn't figure out which direction was up or what. I had to dig, took about maybe 2.5 hours to dig out through the moonroof into the snow and out a tunnel. And then I went out to the road, and I had blood coming down my head, and nobody was on this road at night. Eventually a woman came along, passed me right by, because I looked, like straight out of some ghoul movie, She passed me by, and then she backed up and squeaked her window open. And I said, I know I look horrible. I'm not expecting you to put me in your car, but would you do me a favor? 20 minutes ahead is a police station. Please tell them I'm here, and, please send the ambulance. And she left. And then I was like, hopefully she'll do that. Fortunately, they did come. And and that all worked out. I only say that because I did have an Abhinavesha experience. I really was ready. I really was in a state of peace. I really was. Here was the moment. And I was glad to see that I was ready to meet it with, my internal eyes wide open. Okay? That's just to give you an example of Abhinavesha. Any thoughts about this, the 5 kleshas? Pretty cool map, huh? 5 causes of suffering. But in truth, you can see how only the first one really matters. So that's why it's like they keep, both the Gita and the sutras keep pressing this in. You are infinite, eternal, and whole, or you're not. And every moment, that's our decision. Every moment, that's our decision. When we forget this, we're associating with a lower self, and let the games begin.
It's easier to forget when it's not realized by an experience, and this is why the practice of meditation is the path. That's what Ram Dass path too, just to realize the pure awareness that he spoke, from when he was trying to teach us about.
And that's beautifully said, because when you have an experience, no one can take it away from you. And that's why practices are important, because practices create the experience. Every practice of yoga at every level of the being is designed to give you an experience or bring you closer to the experience of your infinite, eternal, whole self. Every practice. So that's the aim, in the teaching. And the other piece of that is to not forget what this curriculum is on this planet. We get confused and we forget, and we get into the Maya, and we forget that, it's all here for our amusement, that it is not really to be taken so seriously, So those are the kleshas. And that's the first map that he lays out in terms of practices. That's pretty good. So he says, ignorance, avidya, is the fertile soil, and as a consequence, all of the other obstacles will persist. They may exist in any state, dormant, feeble, intermittent, or fully operative. Ignorance, avidya, is the view that the ephemeral, the impure, the pain of suffering, that which is not the self, is somehow permanent, pure, pleasurable, and the true self. Again, we forget who we are, and we think we're asmita. So much for those. We're going to go on now. So he says here, and this is really the key to our curriculum again, and the heart of a spiritual life. Clinging to life, so now we're here at Abhinavesha. Clinging to life and the fear of death is sustained by an intrinsic force in the same way that all other primal causes of suffering persist, dominating even the wise. So he's saying this is the last and one to go. He says, when these primal causes of suffering exist in subtle or potential form, they are to be reduced, okay, and then there's a word here, destroyed, which I don't agree with, and with this translation. I don't think they can be destroyed, by the process of involution, which returns them to their source. Okay, the way I would say that is this. When we have a fear, so I think last time I gave this example of, something that we could more relate to. We all have beliefs about ourselves. So let's say I have the belief that I'm unworthy, okay? But it's unconscious, okay? I don't think I'm unworthy, right? The self that I am, I'm not operating out of unworthiness, but I have a child in here that really, had some experiences, and a long time ago, that child decided that it was unworthy. Wasn't as good as my brother, wasn't as good as, the person in school, wasn't good at that, somehow unworthy of love. That's sitting way back there, but unconscious, okay? But in the meantime, when it's sitting back here as a subliminal impression, I'm out here trying to prove how worthy I am, okay? And I'm also in here trying to say, don't bring up the unworthiness. I don't like to feel unworthy. A long time ago, I decided I was unworthy. It's not fun. I threw it far away because I don't want to experience that. I'm really afraid that I am, which means I believed it. Okay? I believed it about myself. I forgot I was infinite, eternal, and whole, and believed I was unworthy. So now it sits back here. I try not to experience it. all my attention, unconscious attention, which is very powerful, I would say more powerful than our conscious attention, which is why when we say we're out here doing our affirmations, but all the while we've got our, unconscious affirmations, which are more powerful than our conscious ones, because we can't see them, okay? So that's back here, and then I'm out here trying to prove the opposite of it. That's the way most of us run.
I just want to say, in listening to you right now, I'm having a little binge of gratitude for a guy named Wavy Gravy.
For say again, for wavy gravy, right?
What I'm taking from it really viscerally is just how important it is that we not take too seriously. That our teachers of the perspective of not taking too seriously, Patch Adams is another one in my life,
Amen.
are really, really important teachers. And for me, they are.
Well, and humor is a sign of a very high being. I mean, Neem Karoli Baba was very funny and took very little seriously. He was a rascal. He was, read some of the books about him. He was constantly teasing with people and constantly going to their fears too. Like the people that he loved the most, he'd be like, let's say Amy's my favorite. I'd be like, oh, don't go near her. She's stinky. She's stinky. He would do that to the people that he loved the most. Don't go near her. She's stinky. So that it could bring up oh, wait. And the people who knew him would be like, oh, he loves me. How lovely that he loves me. To be insulted by the guru is such a great thing because, any attention from him is good attention. But he constantly did that Ram Dass would constantly talk about how he wanted so much to be in Neem Karoli Baba's presence, Neem Karoli Baba's presence. The moment he would get there, he'd bow down and then he'd be like, you, get out. I want you to go. I have a mission for you. You go away. He'd be like, what? I just got here. I want to be with you. Everybody gets to sit at your feet. No, you send me away. So he would play with the, and again, don't take it too seriously.
Yeah.
Yep. And even there's another story too that Ram Dass tells about, he was with Neem Karoli Baba and then I don't know if it was a war or something was going on not so far, and he was like, we got to organize the things and cars and food and help out and do this and be of service. And Neem Karoli Baba was like, why? He was like, what? You got to be kidding me. What? That's what we're supposed to do. Neem Karoli, if you want to, whatever, okay, go help them. But wasn't gonna hop on the bandwagon of seriousness about it. So, I have to go back to chapter 2. After the kleshas, we begin the beautiful gradient approach, and this is what I love about him and practices. Many people say about Patanjali's Yoga Sutras that it's really only for the masters, that only the very, very high people could possibly comprehend what's going on here. And I say that is not true at all. And so he says here, this reservoir of subliminal impressions, these primal causes of suffering, what they do is they'll produce obstacles and experiences both in the present moment and in foreseeable future lives, if we don't go back there and unwind them. So our work here is all personal. We will see this external Maya change for ourselves when we unwind what is back here in our subliminal impressions, in our samskaras. Now he gives us the way to do that. He says here, the suffering from pain that has not yet arisen is avoidable. Okay? He's saying basically the same thing that is the Zen saying. You can avoid pain. Okay? Our resistances create pain. So that's pretty cool. Ignorance of the true self is the cause of an illusory union with asmita. Keeps saying it again and again. Now he says here, the means for the remedy. Are we up for the remedy? I'm up for the remedy. The means for the remedy is cultivating, love this, unbroken, discriminative awareness. Unbroken discriminative awareness. Now he gives later this beautiful image of what that is. He says, have your attention become like an unbroken spout of pouring oil. I love that image. You know what like a pure spout of pouring oil is like an unbroken spout of pouring oil. That's what your attention needs to be like. A constant, pure, present pouring, okay? To create that with your attention and your awareness. Now, I think it's interesting, and many of you have probably had Abhyanga Shirodhara. You know what that is? The Ayurvedic treatment where literally they pour an unbroken spout of pouring oil, warm oil, on your third eye. Okay? So whether you know anything about it or not, and whether you've known about this verse that I just read from Patanjali Sutras, if you are laying down and there's a jar with a spout and warm oil is pouring, beautifully and evenly on your third eye, and then it drips through your hair and over your brain, gathers here and pours into a bucket behind you. Whether you're aware of it or not, some portion of your attention is right here all the time experiencing this. And it creates a focus, and it's a really beautiful, beautiful experience to have. So it literally creates a literal meditation. By sustained practice, so through this process, wisdom progresses through 7 phases until it extends to the fullest realm. So now we're about to hear about the 8 limbs of yoga. So many of you have heard of Ashtanga Yoga. Ashtanga Yoga is not what America has branded as Ashtanga Yoga. They took the name from Patanjali's Yoga Sutras. Ashta means 8, Anga means limbed, the 8-limbed path. You are about to hear about the true 8-limbed path of that Patanjali lays out, which is a gradient approach to attaining unbroken, discriminative awareness. By sustained practice, all of the component parts of yoga, impurities will dwindle away and wisdom's radiant light will shine forth with discriminative knowledge. Yoga has 8 component parts. Okay. They are self-control for social harmony, those are the yamas. Precepts for personal discipline, those are the niyamas. Yoga pose, which are asana. Regulation of prana, which is pranayama. Withdrawal of the senses from the maya, which is pratyahara. Contemplation of our true nature, which is dharana. Meditation on the true self, which is jhana, dhyana. And being absorbed in spirit, which is samadhi. So we're going to go through those now little by little. So how many people could name the yamas and niyamas?
I can name a few of them. Maybe.
So there's 10. 5 yamas, 5 niyamas. And the order actually means is worth something. You probably all could name some, and as I name them, you're going to go, I know that name. That makes sense. So these, when Swami Kripalu came to America, he had been in silence, and he was still in silence when he came to America, and he was about to give his first darshan on a slate, and Amrita Sai was translating. And it was like, what's he going to say? What's he going to speak about? Interestingly enough, he spoke on the yamas and niyamas. Beautiful. When he was leaving, and his last darshan, before he left the group, it was like, what's he going to say? And he spoke on the yamas and niyamas. I think that's interesting because it, to me, says something about the importance of these. And what I love about yoga is the simplest practice, like, that's it. Like, I'm always like, that one practice is all you need. Do mantra, and that could take you all the way home. Sing the Hanuman Chalisas ceaselessly, and that could take you all the way home. Practice dirga, ujjayi, breath, period, continually, and that could take you all the way home. The yamas and niyamas as a practice could take you all the way home. Okay? So we're going to go through each of these qualities. So the yamas, I just want to talk about the word yama and niyama. So I like to think of it as this. They often get put out as the do's and the don'ts. I think that's really horrible. And also they sometimes get put out as the 10 commandments. I think that's pretty horrible. Like, these are the 10 commandments of yoga. And they're not the 10 commandments, which is like, thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's wife. Tick, 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 tick. This is real simple. This is a science. If you would like to be happy, you have to do these things. Doesn't care whether you do them or not. But if you want to be happy, this is the way to find happiness. It's that simple. Practice these things and they'll lead you to happiness. Don't practice them, road to hell. It's pretty clear. Okay? So also yamas, I think of them as we have a garden inside of us. With the yamas, it's the weeding. There are things in our consciousness that we need to weed out. The garden, you're never done. There's constantly weeds to be weeded out. You got to keep your attention on your garden and constantly be weeding these things out of your garden. Niyamas, there are things to be planted. There are things that need to be watered. There are things that need to be nurtured. So in our consciousness, I see them more as these are the things to weed out. These are the things to water and nurture rather than do's and don'ts. The first one, anybody ever heard of this? Ahimsa. Non-violence. Okay, so just so you know, Gandhi, all about the yamas and niyamas. Basically, it was if you know Gandhi, and I like to call myself a Gandhophile, I've read every book that Gandhi wrote and then all of his biographies. He pretty much, every darshan, all he ever really spoke about was the yamas and niyamas. It was that simple, okay? Ahimsa, non-violence. Here's what I would like to say. It's pretty hard to be a happy person and be violent. You're just not going to like yourself, okay? It's just pretty hard to be a happy person and be violent. It's that simple. Now, here's what's interesting, and this is what I like about these. Who do you become if you start to weed out violence? And this practice goes from overt to subtle, because of course, violent. Great, I'm not going to hit Amy in the face. Great, good, I'm such a good person. I hate her, but I didn't hit her in the face. Okay, well, oh wait, maybe I could start now. Could I remove the hatred from my thoughts? Wow, now I don't like myself. Is that violent? Can I remove my unhappy thoughts? Like violence, what is violence? My judgments, no matter how big or small, are actually violence that I'm committing on the world. My projections create experiences, and they end up being violent in some ways. So this practice goes deep. So the question is this: who do you become if you weed out ahimsa from your life? What are the qualities? Happy. Service to others. Aware. Peaceful. See, and this peaceful, I just want to concentrate on this for a second, because the opposite of nonviolence is peace. Free. I would add in here loving also. And I think the word love has a marketing problem. And I think it did 2,000 years ago. Because this first practice could have been, practice love, practice being loving, right? But that's like, ugh. Don't we all just, I personally have a ugh around that, right? It's like, but remove violence. And actually, what's so cool is when we remove, so this is like A Course in Miracles, which says, The Course in Miracles doesn't aim at teaching the meaning of love, for that's beyond what could be taught. What it does aim at is removing the blocks to the awareness of love's presence. Well, this is a block to the awareness of love's presence. And when we remove it, we stand seated in ourself, which is peaceful and loving and happy and free, and begin to care for others. Now, can you see how this is related to this first avidya, lack of knowledge of the true self? Can you see how when we believe that we are infinite, eternal, and whole, and people who believe that they are infinite, eternal, and whole are less apt to be violent to themselves because you're me and we're together forever. Why would I choose, and plus I know the laws. If I hit you, guess what's happening this time? You're going to hit me. And if I kill you and your family, the next lifetime you kill me and my family. And if I kill you in your nation, the next time you kill me in my nation. And we go on and on and on until suddenly somebody says, that was fun. Are you infinite, eternal, and whole yet? Can we put down our swords and start that party? Okay. So we are less violent. The more we believe that we are infinite, eternal, and whole, we go less to violence and judgment. If I'm infinite, eternal, and whole, it's not up to me to judge. I don't know what's going on here. I don't care what's going on here. So I'm free from that. So that's number one. Any thoughts? Practice it. Start to weed out violence in all of its forms. And I would say judgment is violence. Number two, satya. Truthfulness. Satya is the truth. Don't lie. Don't be a liar. So don't be violent and don't lie. It's impossible to be happy and be a liar. It just is. It's impossible to feel connected to others and to be lying. It's impossible to feel whole with yourself and to lie to yourself. Okay? What happens, or who do we become when we stop lying to ourselves and others? What's the experience of being truthful? Honesty. So we become honest. And what does honesty look like on people? Transparent. Humble. Into me see. Intimacy. Into me see. Become intimate with others. Impossible to be intimate with others if we're lying. It's impossible to feel seen. So we start to belong. We start to have integrity. We start to trust and be trustworthy. Who trusts a liar? We know when people are lying to themselves and we can't lean into them. And we know when they're lying to us and we can't lean into them. Now, this is interesting because I taught for many years, some of my favorite teachings ever. I worked at a drug and alcohol rehab center for 6 years, and I taught yoga and mindfulness. And it was some of my wonderfully most challenging, people to teach to because of the trauma, quite frankly, that they had been through. Most people who are drug and alcohol users, really, it's related to trauma. And life sucks so much that it's like, why not just get drunk and stoned until it's over? Because it's much better being drunk and stoned than it is sort of coming to reality when you've got abusive parents who are often drug things, and you've got pasts of abuse that you can't figure out, and then you've been abusive and you can't make heads or tails of it, and you hate yourself and you hate everybody, and it's like, oh, they would walk in and guess what? They were violent. Guess what? They didn't tell the truth. It's like, okay. This is what happens. They're violent, and you don't tell the truth, and you're not ever going to be happy if you don't start practicing these. And they loved when I started to lay out these principles. Again, it's not personal. This isn't like you have to stop lying. This is like everybody. It's the same curriculum for everyone. You want to be happy? This is the curriculum. No one had ever shared with them the curriculum. And most of them did not have a belief that it was possible to be happy because they had no one in their world that exemplified it. I would come in and they'd say, you're fake. You're so fake. I had to prove, and I loved it. I had to prove and gain their respect because they were like, this happiness thing that you've got going on, it's bullshit. You're just, until they saw me. Most of them were there for 3 months to longer, a year, and then I was like, oh, okay, maybe there is something, and, really to lean into it. So, number 2, ahimsa. Number 2, satya. Number 3, Ashdeya. Don't steal. Really hard to be a happy person and steal shit from others. Okay? So, again, recovery, they were violent, they lied, and they stole shit. You had to watch everything you laid down. It was gone in a minute, okay? So, wow. Don't take things that are not yours. And that includes even, like as a teacher, ideas, claiming things, for yourself that aren't yours to claim. And, like there's lots of subtlety to this, Don't take things that don't belong to you. What happens when you start to not take things that aren't really yours to take? Actually, it does. It creates a sense of abundance. It creates a sense of self-reliance. People who steal are in a state of lack. You have and I don't. I deserve, they're in a state of lack. Again, it's this loss of I'm infinite, eternal, and whole. When we feel like we are lacking and we are down, we steal. We say, you've got more than I, and I deserve to take this from Target because Mr. Target doesn't care, and I need this more than Mr. Target who's sitting in his mansion somewhere, okay, great. But if we don't, if we earn what we get, we realize I have everything I need. I know how to create in my world what it is that I need and want. Integrity, again, yes. Say that again, Amy, louder. Satisfaction. And it's such a great word. Like it's really like a deep satisfaction. Like someone who steals can't ever really find that satisfaction. They know they didn't earn it. They know that it's a lie, basically. On to my next one, and one of my all-time favorites and very misunderstood, brahmacharya. So how many people are familiar with this word brahmacharya in the yoga world? Okay, so if you're in the yoga world, for most people, like at the ashram, we practice brahmacharya, but what it meant was we practiced celibacy. Okay, that is not what brahmacharya means. But this word broken down is this. The word acharya, I love this word, acharya. It means to be taught, it means to be a teacher who, an acharya is someone who teaches from life's curriculum rather than from a textbook. So not a kindergarten teacher, but someone who teaches from their wisdom, okay? An acharya, Brahma, is God, okay? Brahma acharya is basically everything is God. This is a person who realizes that every piece of energy is God. So I'm going to go back to Swami Kripalu. He had lots of people giving him lots of money. He could have been wealthy, per se. Little loincloth, book. Everything that he had was animate to him. He called things by name. Sister pen, brother book. Like everything was an animate. He was in relationship with it. There was no wasting, okay? Because everything was God. You don't waste God. You don't just go, oh, throw it out, worthless. Nothing is worthless. And this is don't waste. It is impossible to be happy and waste shit. It is such a lack of respect for energy, for whatever created it, for God. Everything is God, okay? So it gets related to sexual energy because it's basically saying, don't waste your sexual energy, okay? And that's one of the main ways in which they apply brahmacharya to sexual energy. But what it's about is, don't waste anything, okay? I have a friend here, some of you know her. I think Ranjana, our dear friend, is one. She practices brahmacharya beautifully. She always has. She does not waste a thing. Very little garbage goes out of her house. She cleans everything. She's got plenty of money and could have a huge home. She does not. She wants a home that's just the right size, that's not, beautiful things, but one. And then when she decides that she's ready to get rid of something, she doesn't throw it out. She brings it into her store and she sells it because it was beautiful when she got it and it's beautiful now and somebody else belongs to have it. She really practices brahmacharya and it's beautiful to watch. So again, recovery, these people were violent. They lied, they stole shit, and they wasted everything. Everything was just, treated it like trash. Constant. No respect for anything. for cars, for money, it's like, wow, impossible to be happy if you don't practice these things. And the last, aparigraha. Don't covet. I put them in covet things. It's like jealousy. I always have a hard time spelling up on a thing because I realize I'm a very visual speller, and somehow the thing gets messed up front. So parigraha, don't covet. Hey, good to see you, Allegra. I'm so glad you're here. You taking the girl? Oh, Leela, it's time for your walk. Lucky girl. So, yeah, don't covet. Again, when we look outside of ourselves and we think they have something that I don't, we've forgotten that we're infinite, eternal, and whole. You have nothing that I don't. And if I see you as having something that I don't have, rather than be jealous of it, I should be inspired by you. Look at what this being has created. That means I too can do what they have done, because they're just like me. So change your jealousy to inspiration. Rather than I'm jealous of that person, I'm inspired by them. They are creating in a way, and if we are infinite, eternal, and whole, that's what happens to us. And we stop coveting and jealous. So again, just pointing out this fictional person in recovery. They were violent, they lied, they stole shit, they wasted stuff, and they were constantly jealous of some other people. Well, you're that way because you had good parents, or because you didn't get abused, or because you have money, or because you were white, or because there's always some reason, okay, that it's not happening to them. Those are the yamas. Okay? Now, what I say is, in these rungs, because this is the first rung, you have to start, if you're going to start climbing the ladder, you have to start with this desire, which is, I'd like to be the best that I can be. I'd like to be a good person. I would like to get on the path of being the best that I could be. It has to be sincere. If you're not there, it's not even worth talking to you. And again, often in recovery, people were very happy in this, so there was no way to get them started on the path. That's fine. Someday, maybe, they'll desire and believe that there's a possibility that they could turn into their best selves. But no one, and this is the thing about recovery, no one can give it to you. Like, no matter how someone outside tries, no matter how much your mom wants you to care for yourself, no matter how much I want you to care for yourself, the person has to decide. My life, my thing, I'm going to decide to be the best person that I can be. So that's where the spiritual journey starts. Do you want to be the best that you can be? If so, get on the rung. Start to eliminate, start to weed out your garden of these things. Pretty cool?
You're going to get to judgment at some point, because that's where it's hitting me, because anytime I'm in judgment of any of those things, then I'm out of the place I'd like to be in.
So, like, it's a great, it's not even a question, but it's a great insight, Barry, to go like, my judgment of when I am violent is what you're saying, or my judgment of when I lie is actually a way in which it's stopping me.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I judge mine or the others more, but both are active.
Right, okay. So that's a great, it's a great thing to go, okay, so when we turn on the light of consciousness, and now we start to watch ourselves and we say, this is really interesting. I wasn't so kind there. I really lied there. And then we get into these tricky things, because there's really like, wow, I'm not going to tell my kids this thing. I know I'm lying or withholding the truth. It's for their best interest. It's like you have to weigh things and go like, if they found out the truth, will they be upset with me? How can I, like there are times where, the most truthful thing is to not necessarily tell the truth. So there's nuances to all of this, But when we turn the light of consciousness on, it starts to come on and we start to watch. Pono?
Did you ever hear the expression a white lie?
A white lie, yes, as opposed to a black one. Right. And for me, this is why also going back to recovery, but I think that we're all in recovery. We're all recovering from either drugs, alcohol, or just being poor thinking. The first step in recovery is like, you got to have a spiritual conversion. And boy, straight across the board, if there isn't a belief in a higher power, you don't have a chance, is what it's saying. And for me, what that goes to is this. The moment I actually believe that there's a God and God consciousness, then it's like, boom, God is watching me all the time. All the time. God's watching me all the time. Then I like to go to, well, I'm watching me all the time. I am watching me all the time. Sometimes I pretend I'm not watching me, but I'm watching me all the time. So God's watching me all the time, and I'm watching me all the time. So I certainly notice, like, okay, I'm going along, and all of a sudden my napkin falls out of my pocket, and I go, I'm not going to pick that up. It's blowing in the wind, and I'm like, fuck, God's watching me. Fuck, I'm watching me. Go pick up the napkin, and then, of course, I have to pick up all the other garbage on the street along the way. Say, I'm so sorry, and put it in the trash can. It's like, wow, what do I think's going on in this movie? Like, I can do something that's not going to be seen. Well, again, back to recovery. They thought it was so possible to do things that weren't seen. You don't know. You didn't know I do that. You didn't know I stole that. You didn't know I lied. You didn't see me do that. It's like, no one was in the room. It's like, really? So, God's watching you. You're watching you. That's turns on the light of consciousness. And I say that in regards to our judgment because we, right away, often then do this judgmental God. And we have to start watching that. Do we have a judgmental God? Saw you masturbating. Wrong. It's how do I rationalize that? God is actually here right now. What do we do with that? Got to make peace with that. Got to figure it out. That was a big sigh. All right, so those are our yamas. Are you ready for the niyamas? And what time is it?
5:11.
5:11, thank you. So we're clearly not going to get to... So these are the niyamas. And many of you have heard of these also. So the first one is saucha. I take that back. The first one is santosha. These are niyamas. Santosha. No, I'm sorry. The first one is saucha. First one is saucha. This is purity. Cleanliness. Purity and cleanliness as a practice. Purity and cleanliness as a practice. Okay? Saucha. So, what does that mean? I'm going to go back to recovery because, again, it's such a good, sort of blatant description. So there was this girl, and she was so depressed, had all good reasons to be depressed. She had the worst self-esteem, and she'd sat on the couch every day, could not be present in any way, shape, or form. I have low self-esteem. I have low self-esteem. I can't be present because I have low self-esteem. I'm working on my self-esteem. Low self-esteem. Okay, so she'd been told she had low self-esteem, and so she was enjoying her low self-esteem. And I would say, I forgot what her name was, if you want to have some good self-esteem, why don't you do something? So, we're here early. Would you fluff get the cushions all in order? Would you get out the mop or the broom and sweep the floor? Would you pick up the cigarette butts around the pool? Let's get into saucha and purity. And guess what will happen? I feel so good that I made the room look nice. I feel so good that the pool looks so wonderful. And I did this right. Self-esteem will shift and change, okay? In this practice of saucha, of purity, cleanliness. And I would say, there's beauty involved here too. Create beauty. Start to create beauty around you. Cleanliness and purity is beauty. Clean up everything, It's puja. This is puja. Get into, what you want to know what to practice. Get up. It's what can, I know for myself, I like to get up. I have my morning ritual, and then I got to put everything in its place. And that's my morning puja. Just get, before I go, my bed has to look like this, and my dishes have to look like that, and my, couch has to look like this. And it's okay, my place is in order, Okay? So, Saucha. Santosha, the next one. This is contentment. Here's the big practice, gang. Practice contentment at all times. Notice when you get discontent. Start to practice being content. This brings up this thing. Can I be comfortable in my discomfort? Can I be okay in this challenge? Can I be content in the discontent that's happening around me? Can I be peaceful in a non-peaceful world? Can I practice contentment? It is an internal game, okay? Because when you start to practice contentment, you get out of the game of, I'll be happy if you would just get it together. I would be happy if this war would just stop. I would be happy if I just had $100,000 in the bank. You know, I would be happy if I just had the right mate. You know, and you get out of that game. Contentment is an internal game. Contentment is yours to be had now, if you so choose. It is a constant momentary choice. Any thoughts? Now, these last three actually, I think are really interesting because Patanjali uses them at the beginning of glasses. I keep. Thank you. Talk about awareness. You have it and I do not. I want to find out where these three are. I don't think I'm going to find it, but basically. Okay, I'll skip that little train of thought. So, tapas. Anybody aware of the word tapas? This is really where yoga happens, okay? So the word tapas is a deliberately chosen practice that creates grist for the mill. A deliberately chosen practice that creates grist for the mill. So it's like saying, I'm going to chant 108 chalisas. There's some endurance to that. I'm going to learn. I'm going to learn the Hanuman Chalisa. That's a tapas, okay? In setting that up, I decide, I set some grist for the mill, I meet some challenges, I have to keep overcoming them, I have to find my attention. So these are any practice that you set deliberately, you create this tapas, you create this grist for the mill for your personal growth. What's cool about it is this, God and yourself hear it. So what's great is when you decide to create a tapas, you say, I'm going to use this practice. You know, I'm going to do yoga every day for 30 minutes or yoga 3 times a week for 30 minutes on my mat. Okay? And then shit hits the fan. Can't do it today. Can't do it now. Need to do things, you know, like all the things that come in the way of that tapas are going to come up. But when we choose something deliberately to choose as a reflection for our personal growth, something interesting happens. Often, if we don't have tapas in our life, then it has to show up in our life to teach us. And let me just tell you that often the consequences are way worse when they're in our life than if they're on our mat. So if you can get it on your mat and work with yourself on your mat, you're going to save yourself a whole lot of time, energy, and money with, you know, creating the dramas out here in your life. So it's really great to deliberately choose what practices am I putting myself into this, you know, time. I choose every year, I choose a year and a quarter. In October, for myself from October to December is what I call inquiry time about, is this really the practice? Do I want to change it, define it? And then I do the practice for, you know, the full year. Okay? And so, and it doesn't matter what the practice is. It can be big or small. Setting a practice is important, just to say, you know, it is. So I like to always tell this one. There was a year where I chose as a practice because I hated the sun salutation. We lived at a place where our yoga was rolling around on the floor in meditation and motion and didn't have alignment and anything like that. And then when I came out and I saw people doing these sun salutations, I thought, this is ridiculous. This is not yoga. This is so stupid. And I hated it. I had a lot of judgment around it. And then I was like, I'm going to do a sun salutation for every day for a year and a quarter. And then I happened to film it, which was fun, on fast motion. So my sun salutation took like 25 minutes, but on fast motion it was like 25 seconds. That year I happened to travel a lot. I was in Europe, I was in temples, I was in India, I was on planes, I was in New York, I was in Barcelona, I was all over, and I would do sun salutations on busy streets and in the center aisle of the airport, and like fun things, and it was a lot of fun. And I have to say this, I love the sun salutation. I learned a lot from the sun salutation. I worked a lot out in that sun salutation. And I really began to appreciate that I didn't have to think about what to do, and that, I overcame a lot by playing with the sun salutation. So, tapas, consider what your practices are going to be. Self-study. The spiritual being is interested in themselves. That's all there is here to study. Swadhyaya. Be interested and curious about who you're being all of the time. Be interested and curious about who you're being all of the time. Constantly adjust. Watch yourself. Self-study. Watch yourself. Some people aren't interested in watching themselves. And again, this is going back to recovery. It's the brain, the know-it-all brain, like these 18-year-olds, these 26-year-olds, these 30-year-olds, let alone 40, 50-year-olds would come in, I know it all. Like, I'm not open to learning anything because I know it all. You know it all? Like, wow, I know it all? No need to study. Learning is hard, so we're not learning. I got everything I got to learn. I'm done learning. Graduated high school or not or whatever, but I'm done. It's like, wow, that's crazy. Self-study. We are on an endless, infinite learning experiment. The only thing to do here forever is study the self. So study yourself. And the last but not least, Ishvari Pranadhana. Ishvari Pranadhana is with great reverence for God. Do all of this with devotion. Do all of it with devotion. Cultivate devotion. These are things you want to cultivate in your garden, that you want to plant and grow and water. You want to create spiritual practices for yourself so that you can study yourself and have great reverence in God, with God. Ishvari Pranadhana. Ishvara is God. Pranadhana is this great reverence and great devotion. So cultivate devotion in all that you do. Now, this was what I was trying to look for before. In Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, he basically says these three things mark, again, the spiritual path. Right there. Creating tapas, studying the self, great reverence for the Lord. I think we're going to end there. Even though this is rung 1 and rung 2, okay? Now, actually, I take that back, because the yamas and niyamas are the first rung. So we have yet to go on to the other 7. Hopefully you'll come back, because otherwise you'll miss enlightenment, and, who knows? Like, it'd be horrible to have just gotten to the first rung. Don't you want to go all the way? So let's see, July, first Wednesday of July, whatever that is.
Wednesday of July.
So thank you so much. I'm so appreciative. Dasi, thank you so much. Really appreciate it. So grateful for Hanuman Maui. And hopefully you got something from it. I'm very open to any feedback.
How soon do you post them?
Oh, this will, we recorded it, and I will put this on YouTube. The first one is on YouTube if you want to watch it, and so is the Bhagavad Gita is on YouTube. So if you press in Devarshi Stephen Hartman, Hanuman Maui, Patanjali Sutras, or Bhagavad Gita, you'll get these, the talks. And this one will be 2 days, maybe. I'll have it up.
Thank you.
Wonderful.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes.
Devarshi Stephen Hartman.
Stephen with a V.
V, Stephen with a V. All right, thank you, gang. Love being here. Love you all. I'm glad we're infinite, eternal, and whole together forever. It's a good thing. You're a good, weird crew to be with forever. I'm very grateful. Fun cast of characters.
And I just want to say, if anyone's interested